Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from NASCAR.info coming at you after the conclusion of the Quaker Stage 400 at Atlanta. We're unofficially pending the results of post-race inspection and I suppose some last-minute scoring issues further back in the pack here, with the race ending under caution. Joey Logano has again pulled off a victory here in Atlanta, the first race of the playoffs, punching his ticket to the round of 12 and yada yada. I didn't enjoy this race. I'm just going to say it right off the bat. I really didn't enjoy this race. I thought it was a great simulation of a race. I I really didn't enjoy it, and I'm still kind of come to terms with it. And I waited a bit longer to do the show here before starting, just to make sure it wasn't just the initial feeling of it. That was just really frustrating. I don't exactly know what to say. It's not so much just Logano winning or something like that or anything like that. It was much more than that. It just seemed like you couldn't do much racing out there, which I thought was bizarre. I mean, I mentioned the 2003 Aero package in the super speedways back at Daytona, and yeah, you would have kind of similar to this, a big monster packs, 2 and 3 wide, and everybody's all bunched together and everybody's really close to the lead. But could anybody actually get the lead? Well, that was kind of a different story here. People could, but it was anytime that somebody got the lead here, it was a Herculean effort. It seemed like everything had happened just right to get somebody just enough far ahead to, in one case, Austin Cindric, just leading pretty much the entire second stage and nobody able to really do anything or even trying anything. And then they were trying to say, okay, well, now there's like a fuel mileage issue or something like that, and people will just wait till the last 10 laps. And everybody's going to step up and it's going to be even crazier. And I really didn't enjoy this race. I thought this was terrible. There's worse things. I mean, thank goodness it wasn't the worst possible race there with, Kyle Larson and Chase Briscoe walking away from what was a savage wreck at the beginning of this, very similar to what we saw with Sam Mayer in yesterday's Xfinity race with the fuel cell catching on fire, or seeming to be the case. A troubling follow-up to what we saw with Daniel Suarez at Daytona. Again, it's, I imagine in person, just like any race, in person, this is probably would look really amazing because, you got the field all bunched up. You never know what's going to happen. But I'll tell you what, I mean, I picked Austin Cindric to win this race. And even though he was as dominant as he was in the second stage, when he got to the third stage and he was about like 15th to 18th place, I was kind of watching him try to work his way up because he stood out. He was, the bright yellow car, only yellow car in the field. And I was kind of watching him just to see if he could make any kind of move through the pack. And he would pick the low lane and it would kind of move forward a little bit. And then somebody else in the air lane would move. And then he'd have to go to that one. And then he'd drop back a little bit. And it was just back and forth, back and forth. He'd try each lane. He was going high in the middle and low, not doing any crazy moves or anything like that. Not like a real abrupt lane transition like we usually see at the actual super speedways in Daytona and Talladega. And then it just couldn't seem to go anywhere. And it's like, this guy is like pretty much one of the fastest cars in the field. And, seemed to have the lead so well in hand, even to the point where he was like ahead of traffic, but you put him back there and he just couldn't go anywhere. And it made me think, I don't know if this is the same experience for the other drivers back there. But you'd have people that would just gradually get up there. And again, it just seemed like pulling teeth to get around anybody out there. And so you had people that were leading for really long periods of time. Ty Gibbs, even looking to be in position to get his first Cup win, led a good chunk of this race where just nobody could get around him. I just didn't feel like I saw any racing out there in this one. And, I've been outspoken on this Atlanta track for one reason or another, whether it's been how it brought out the worst aspects of, the broadcast or something before, or, it's really difficult. It's really difficult. And I hate to come in this negative already from the start because I already seem to get this reputation from talking about anything about current NASCAR here, but I found the experience really frustrating, just really, really frustrating. And kind of the buildup from yesterday's race too, which I'd say I heard the Xfinity race getting a decent amount of criticism here from this weekend, but I actually felt like that was actually kind of the best of the two races. I felt like the Xfinity race was actually a bit better. The frustrating thing was there, you kind of could make some moves and challenge for the lead, but it seemed like every time you tried to, you get stuffed into the wall and you drop back, and then, you fell back out of it again. I think it almost felt like the track was too small for what they were trying to do. Corey Heim making some good moves at the end of that Xfinity race. Lawless Allen being up there and then getting squirreled out of the way by AJ Allmendinger. You at least had some physicality to the racing and some strategy and stuff. Although, again, I think in that race, you were kind of punished for trying to make a move. We saw a little bit of that in this race today. Ross Chastain, I don't know what was going on with him, but about 3 or 4 times he would get up there at the front and the car would just snap loose on him, or he would back off or whatever, and then dropping back. And then on top of all of this, you have Denny Hamlin in this race where he's at the back of the field just looking to avoid like some big wreck, forgetting the fact that we had that big wreck in the spring race, but only 2 cars were actually out of the race. Everybody else kept going. In fact, several cars that were in that wreck actually ended up contending for the lead again. So I think the much harder wrecks you get would be, again, kind of like Kyle Larson's, where it'd be a 1 or 2 car accident. I think that would be very much a different situation here. But yeah, I think that it was frustrating. It was frustrating. I've seen a lot of very frustrating races in my time. I remember the 2000 Daytona 500 gets a lot of attention. Similar situation. Dale Jarrett just was up there and nobody else could pass him. And, and it looked, it gave kind of the impression of a race. Time was going by and laps were being logged, but could anybody get up there? The 2003 Daytona 500, before the rain came, is another perfect example of it. You watch the first few laps of it, everybody goes 3 wide immediately, which looks amazing, but nobody could do anything, especially once Michael got up there in what was the best car. The only difference between him and Cindric's race and this one is the race stopped before they got to be a point where anybody else could actually kind of challenge him at the end. And so he ended up winning the second 500 that way. It was long, it was exhausting, it was frustrating. I'm glad it was only 400 miles. Thank goodness for that. I know it had an overtime finish and everything. And I was wondering, and I sense this, and it pains me too to say this. The broadcast felt like it was still, even with Lee Diffie in the booth and not Rick Allen, it was still trying so hard to tell me this was the most amazing race that I'd ever seen. That was the most incredible racing ever. And I'm so tired of having to be told that the race is amazing. It should speak for itself. And if it's not doing it, well, then maybe this was a mistake. Maybe they're not running the right package. Maybe they should have practice before the race so that something as simple as a wiring issue on 3 Joe Gibbs cars shouldn't be a problem on Sunday that sends them to the back of the pack. I felt like this broadcast was trying so hard to sell me on it, which was strange because you would think after the spring race, they wouldn't need to do that. And obviously they showed the finish of all that. And that was an extraordinary finish. I've already done a video on that talking about it, and again, I still maintain, I think this is another good example of why this race, should be a top contender for the All-Star race. Make it a much, 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 much shorter race, 70, 80, 100 laps, maybe. Break it down into as many stages you want. 10 lap stages, and just have everybody running 2 and 3 wide, and they can't get off each other and all that. It would be perfect for that, because the All-Star race, it should be something kind of farcical like that. It should be just for fun. It's not for points or anything. To have 2 points-paying races at this track, with this kind of product, and yeah, the track's aging, and I guess you could split hairs and say, okay, the type of racing is changing a little bit from once to the next. But I can't imagine what these drivers are thinking too. Like just how frustrating it is. Cause visually it looked like you just couldn't go anywhere. And, you had people up there. It's not like Logano led every lap. Obviously he had to get up there somehow. But it was literally looked like pulling teeth to actually try to make any kind of strategy. And I'm sure the summer weather and running this, or late summer weather now, and the car is running slick and sliding all over the place isn't going to help. And that was probably a factor in Chastain's issues, for example. But yeah, I mean, it was bizarre. And I was really excited coming into this one. I actually had a hard time going to sleep last night. I kind of was in the mood for something. It's like, okay, well, it's cool. We got a race today. Busch race was, okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it was fine. And that was one that everybody seemed to be most concerned about. Yeah, just not feeling it. So yeah, right off the bat. And it's unfortunate because I mean there were some interesting stories. You had some other drivers that were coming back. Ryan Blaney coming back from some pretty serious damage in an earlier incident, and tried to work his way up there. Suarez looked good, just like he did in that one that was range shortened when he was tracking down William Byron. And you had a couple of people that were trying to make moves, but it just seemed like it was so hard to actually do anything. And then on top of that, you got to throw in all the super speedway stuff with the yellow line rule. You had one where Suarez, what should he have been penalized? Should he have not been penalized? When he had that move earlier, I think that one could have gone either way. The fact that it was not upheld, fine. I didn't think there was any particular problem with that. And then the Justin Haley situation there, where he threw a block on another driver, and one out of the very rare occasions where, you go below the line to advance your position, you will be black flagged. You block somebody, to go below the yellow line, you may be penalized. And that discretionary one, there's been so few examples of that over the years. This was one of the very, very rare occasions where it actually did happen there. Yeah, again, that just felt ticky-tacky too. And kind of, good thing Haley was able to get back up there and finish in the 12th spot. I mean, that's, again, at least something positive out of this here from some of the runs for some of the smaller teams out there. Daniel Hemrick just outside the top 10 in the 11th spot. Great job by him. Ricky Stenhouse and Eric Jones at points during this race were trying to make something happen. I think that there was a portion of the field that was getting spread apart enough that you could actually make some moves. And we saw Eric Jones and Stenhouse, Jones primarily, Stenhouse more secondarily, really trying to make that move in the high lane and actually gain some spots there. Jones at one point breaking into the top 10, but just not able to hang on to it and getting pulled back into the roster there again. But it was good to see somebody try something. It's just that was not the norm. That was not at all the norm. It didn't feel that way. You're just kind of waiting for somebody to do something, and everybody was just spaced just enough apart to make it a little too tricky to try something. And of course, the track is so small that if you try something and you just don't have enough room to do it, you're just in the fence. And you're going to drop back to the pack or something. I think this is kind of what they probably would have anticipated the racing at like the LA Coliseum was going to be like, where people are going to just make like really crazy moves, but then they're not going to have enough room to make them really work. Just frustrating, and it's disappointing, and it's it's on the schedule next year again, and it's going to be in two different the spring race is still going to be in the same spot, but the fall race is going to be on a different position and all that, and we'll see if that makes a difference there too. But to have this, I know there was so much hype after that spring race. They're like, oh my God, we're going to go back to Atlanta, and it's going to start the playoffs, and it's going to be amazing. And we had 3 wide photo finish in overtime, and we're going to get the same thing again. And people were setting themselves up for disappointment on that. It's like, you can't expect that. You just can't. And I think a lot of people got themselves into that, and you still felt that in the booth. It's like, oh boy, your sign fell on the track, and we're going to get in overtime, and it's going to be crazy, and it's going to be this and that. And, of course, there was just some stupid wreck back in the pack there, and, nobody had anything for Logano there at the end, and he just cruised, and that was it. And so, okay, so here we are, yeah, no, I'm glad it's over. That was really frustrating and disappointing. And I'm glad we're going back to Watkins Glen next week. Even though I'm glad it's going back to its August date next year where it should be. But at least try something different. So, this racing here is just not for me, I guess. I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it'll evolve the direction that it should, where, even if you have a situation where it gets back to being like a really old surface and handling is going to be much more key. Well, I mean, are they going to run an actual appropriate package where they have enough horsepower to actually do anything about it? And that's not going to change anything about having pack racing, but then you're eliminating lanes at different parts of the track, which is the other reason that you really have nowhere to go when anything happens out there. That's not going to change. So, and if it does, and if you do break up the packs, is that going to be a situation where, you're going to get rid of the yellow line, you're going to get rid of all those aspects of it? I'm not sure that's going to happen. So I don't know. And I hate it for him. I hate it for him because I know they put a lot of money into this and changed this track around. And yeah, they had an exciting race in the spring with a crazy finish and so forth. But whereas the spring race, and I was on record about saying this, it was a messy race, and I still maintain that. I found it to be an extremely messy race with very few runs longer than 20 laps. This one here, not at all, choked with cautions. And again, I usually think that some of the best racing that happens at any track is under the green flag because you get enough time for people to sort themselves out. Maybe handling or tires become a factor or strategy or anything like that. He just couldn't do anything. It was just, you see more competition in a slot car race. So I don't know. I see comments about the shirt here. Yeah, it's Bobby Labonte's shirt, I believe 2006. Cool to see Bobby in the, there you go. Yeah, in the pre-race ceremonies, given the command. Obviously, the track has changed so much since his day. In fact, the 14 car finishing last in this race with Chase Briscoe, his first last place run since 2022, which is also this year of his last Cup win before he won the Southern 500 just last week, was the first for the number 14 in Atlanta since 2003, where Larry Foyt was in last place, finishing in the number 14 car for A.J. Foyt's team. And Bobby Labonte won his final Cup Series race at Atlanta that same day. It used to be a track where he was just utterly dominating that. So, it was, I found it frustrating. And I could see why people, but I could say at the same time, and I'm sure, I'm just kind of glimpsing at the comments here too. I'm sure people, that do enjoy this, again, it's different. It's definitely a different style in general. If you just like seeing the field bunched really, really close together, where you can see everybody in a shot and you can see everybody like have the chance to maybe have a win if a wreck happens, or maybe if somebody makes a mistake or something like that, it creates kind of the impression of way more happening than it really is. And it can look really exciting. Again, I bet at the track, it's exhilarating because you're just seeing this pack and you're just waiting for something to happen. It's like, oh my God, if there's going to be a wreck, somebody blows a tire, somebody makes a mistake, they're going to drop out of line or they're going to cause a wreck and it's going to shuffle everything up and it's going to be crazy. Again, things that would be perfect for an all-star race, not really a points-paying race, much less 2 points-paying races a year. I can see why people would enjoy it. I mean, and again, I may be in the complete minority. This could be the twisters of races, as I was telling Lastbro here during it. It could be something that just everybody just loves, and I see it, and I'm like, I'm not seeing it. What am I not seeing that everybody else is seeing here? Like, okay, it's one thing if you're a Joey Logano fan. I'm sure, they're having a blast here on this one way or the other. But nah. So, I don't know. I don't want to go too much further down the road on that, but I guess we can talk about some other stories in the field here. I mean, again, I like seeing comers and goers, like seeing people trying to kind of work through the field and, overcome issues. And, in some cases we saw some of that. Of course, the wreck kind of scrambled things up there at the very end. It's good to see J.J. Yealy now shown in the 23rd spot for the New York Racing Team. Great effort for them having to start in the back there. B.J. McLeod not too far behind in 25th, showing here in the results. Cody Ware seemed like he was having a solid run, at least, trying to kind of work his way up there. Still finished in the 30th spot there, got involved in that wreck at the end, finished just ahead of Harrison Burton. Just frustrating. I mean, I was kind of, the radio transmission that Truex had at one point there, where he was just remarking how slow his car felt. That he was just frustrated at like not being able to position it anywhere. And, you're sitting in there and you just got your foot to the floor, trying to run wide open through there, just trying to keep up with the draft, not wanting to lose the draft, not wanting to lose a lap. And then there's just nothing more you can do. And then you get in an incident on the back straightaway, not your fault. Somebody else just bangs doors with you, knocks the steering out of alignment. And now you got a real problem there. And, apparently, that pretty much ended his day. He got back out there. But I see him down in the 35th spot, 12 laps down. Terrible start to the playoffs here. And as I said in the broadcast, looking to, get the best runs that he can. Had to be perfect in the first round because he's one of the lower seeds, and then, you throw that in on it on top of everything else. So, That's too bad. It's just too bad. I was really in the mood for something that was going to be, again, I wasn't expecting a 3 wide photo finish and just have just everything just be nuts here. But at least maybe the track aging a bit and seeing like people slipping up and trying to maintain control of these cars and trying to see some of that. I would have been okay with that. That would have also broken up the packs a bit. It probably would have made it so you really see the skill of the drivers and trying to manipulate things a bit. But it just looked like everyone was trying something. Everyone, I think Cindric wasn't alone on this. I think everyone in that field was trying this lane or that lane, or pairing with this person, or laying back, or trying this, trying that. They're just doing everything in their power to get up there. But once you just got past a certain point, it seemed like around the 10th or 9th spot, there was just like a brick wall, and you just couldn't get past that, or you could kind of get up there a little bit, and then the car would stall out, and you kind of drop back a bit there. Yeah, again, it's not for me. I know a lot of people are going to like it. I'm sure it's going to do great in the Gluck poll because, it had a crash, and it had, kind of a crazy finish in an overtime. Nah, but yeah. Anyway, I don't want to go too much further down that because it's already enough negativity to start the start of this here, but I'm also not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to just come up here and just pretend that everything is all amazing and incredible when it just doesn't look that way. But I'm also not going to go out there and try to deliberately make everything sound like the worst thing ever, because that's not fair either. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. So Joey Logano wins over Daniel Suarez, margin of victory under caution, but on the scoring here shows 212 thousandths of a second. So just a little over 2/10 there. Ryan Blaney in third, Christopher Bell fourth, Alex Bowman in fifth, and then Tyler Reddick in sixth. Playoff drivers in all the top 6 spots. The only playoff driver in the top 10, or the only top 10 driver that was not in the playoffs, was Kyle Busch, who himself seemed to be in position to perhaps break through after the back-to-back runner-up finishes at Darlington and Daytona. Did not do so. Finished a half second back in the 7th spot there. Again, the only driver in the top 10 that was not in the playoffs. Other playoff drivers scattered further back. Ty Gibbs must have got a piece of that accident at the end. That was unfortunate. In position to get his first win potentially at Atlanta, a track where Carl Edwards and Kevin Harvick won their first race. I appreciated the broadcast bringing that up for some context there. Ty ends up back in the 17th spot. Next playoff driver behind him with Brad Keselowski in 19th. Denny Hamlin didn't improve from his strategy there at the beginning and finished in 24th. Harrison Burton in 31st. Truex in 35th. And then, of course, the accident in the very beginning of the race there with Kyle Larson and Chase Briscoe at the end of the pack there, too. Denny Hamlin doing what I usually call the Dale Jarrett strategy. Interesting with Dale Jarrett there, of course, at the broadcast as well. You think back to 500 days at Daytona, where Jarrett had dominated the 2000 Daytona 500, but knew there was a pretty unpredictable super speedway package in 2001. And his strategy, along with Bobby Labonte and a few others, was to lay in the back and just hope that things sorted out and they wouldn't be in the middle of the accident. Turns out when the big accident happened, both Labonte and Jarrett were involved. And instead, in fact, Tony Stewart, who was contending for the lead at the time, landed on Bobby Labonte's car and back at about 27th or 28th spot there. It just shows that penalty, or that strategy, rather, is fraught with its own dangers as well. And this was another example of it, where Hamlin just really wasn't a factor the entire day, ended up 11 seconds back of the lead, somehow got across the stripe there at the finish, though about 6 or 7 seconds behind J.J. Yaley. It just didn't pay off. You're certainly trying to avoid injuries, and certainly the accident that Larson had at the beginning was probably a factor in that too. Although Hamlin, right from the start, when the race started, he was about a half second behind the entire pack, almost lost the draft in the opening laps. He didn't actually climb out of last place until about 5 or 6 laps into this race here. So he was playing it extremely conservative in this. And whether that was just a feeling of misgivings about his car, or how maneuverable it would be, or how competitive he would be, I don't know. But that would be another different situation there too. Again, it's a tricky situation there too. But Chase Briscoe ends up being your last place finisher. That is a 26th different last place finisher this season out of 27 races this season. Chase Briscoe collected in that accident. Glad he was okay as well. That was a pretty hard hit to the back of Larson's car after Larson came off the outside wall there. I think, really out of all things in this race there, I'm glad that turned out as well as it did, but unfortunate for Briscoe after winning the Southern 500 last week. As NASCAR Catholic was tweeting on line here as well, there were other examples of drivers that had finished last after winning a race the week before. Kyle Larson had experienced that himself in one of those examples there. I always think back to Matt Kenseth back in 2003 or 2009, excuse me, where he won the Daytona 500 in Fontana, and then the next week at Las Vegas lost the engine. That was one of the more extreme examples of that, especially since that was only about 3 laps into the race itself. Yeah, tricky situation there. Eric Jones ended up in 26th after having a great run all day. That's unfortunate. You saw Corey LaJoie kind of peek in there a little bit at the end. He and Hocevar end up 15th and 16th. This being arguably one of LaJoie's best tracks here. Unfortunately, not able to capitalize on it here. So, yeah, that's kind of where that is. Yeah, exactly. And Denny wasn't even at the track this week. It kind of felt that way. It'll be interesting. Yeah, Action's Detrimental will be certainly pretty interesting with that at the same time. But there you go. Anyway, so we'll go into the Xfinity Series race here at the same time. We have Austin Hill as your winner in that. Another driver that's had a history of success, to say the least, here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, putting on a good show out there. A lot of contenders. Again, I think between the 2 races this weekend, this was probably the most competitive one that we had. I was very impressed with how well Lawless Allen was doing in the top 5. The AM Racing team certainly needed to have a great run, and I thought Lawless's run at Michigan was a bit overlooked in that event. I think that he had a fantastic showing out there. Unfortunately, he got in an incident in turn 1, so it didn't show in the actual results. This one here, he finishes 13th, Allen did, but again, running as well as he did in the closing stages, just, again, got kind of bumped out of the way by Allmendinger. I've heard of other drivers having issues with AJ kind of bumping them out of the way, and Lawless ended up being the recent example of that in the same situation there. But Lawless in your 13th spot. Again, Corey Heim doing a great job without any sponsorship on there. I know that he's not really an underdog per se. The Sam Hunt effort has some great equipment they put out there, finishing in the 5th spot there for the 26, but not having a sponsor on that car, really in position to get up there. Kind of bizarre that he was going with Hill there at the end instead of Chandler Smith, his teammate. Again, it seemed to kind of help Hill onto a win that he was probably in very good position to pull off anyway, regardless. Hill was looking very strong there at the end, kind of rejuvenated his season. Hill's had a stretch of kind of difficult runs here these last few weeks, but a good time to kind of pick back up the pace here before their playoffs start, I guess, in a couple of weeks there too. Parker Kligerman found himself kind of shaken into the 2nd spot there after running about 5th or 6th in the closing laps. Did a solid job getting up there. Didn't quite pull off the victory there. Gets a runner-up finish there for the Big Machine team. Margin of victory just over 0.3 of a second. Allmendinger, Chandler Smith, and Corey Heim rounding out the top 5. Jesse Love, Sammy Smith, Josh Williams, Brandon Jones, and Ryan Truex, your top 10 there. Just outside of them, Kyle Weatherman came back from a flat tire in qualifying to finish in the 11th spot out there. So again, solid job for him there. But, Lawless Allen, Anthony Alfredo is in the top 5. Again, seeing some kind of comers and goers in this one here. Alfredo bounced off the wall at the beginning, lost a lap, got back up there. He was about 5th or 6th, got shaken out to about 14th there at the finish. Ryan Sieg was once again the big heartbreaker from this race. Again, lost 2 laps at the beginning with a bizarre situation. His car just shut down on the back straightaway, lost 2 laps. Seemed like he was going to be nowhere near the lead. Didn't really even have, how many cautions we even have in that one? We had 6 cautions, a fair amount for the distance of the race itself. But in that time, he gets both of his laps back, gets back in contention, was still climbing into the top 5, just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He had an accident up there, and he ends up getting wiped out of the field there, finishes back in the 32nd spot. Just a really difficult situation. But again, as much as I'm not a fan of this Atlanta track here, again, I think that Xfinity race was really solid. Maybe not the best race there, but it had a lot going on, and it was fun to actually follow that there. So that was kind of an interesting way that all worked out there too. But Dawson Cram ended up being your last place finisher. Big thanks to several people that were sharing pictures there. Stephen Toronto, as well as David McQueen, were sharing some fantastic pictures from the track this weekend. Big thanks to them for contributing those as well. Added those to the article that was already posted late yesterday. Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting story there for you to check out there as well. He was not starting parking, as some people were estimating here. But them actually being able to actually start this race, only the second race that Cram himself has made this year. The Mike Harmon team trying to qualify for as many races as they can. In this case here, they didn't have enough cars for the starting spots, which is something that hasn't happened in that series in about 5 years. That was really impressive, but in kind of a different sense, that is. But Cram ends up being your last place finisher in this, finishing after 18 laps with engine trouble. Sam Mayer, Matt DiBenedetto, CJ McLaughlin, and Morgan Baird completing the bottom 5. Baird was the other driver making his series debut in this race here. Had attempted to make the race at Michigan that Lawless Allen was running. However, he didn't make the show there. This time around, was able to make the race. Did finish multiple laps down with an issue on the car's geometry that cost him multiple laps, an issue that would have been solved if we had practice in this weekend. But unfortunately, that was just not the case with the way they set things up here this weekend. Looking through the rest of the pack here. Brennan Poole in the 15th spot. Ryan Ellis in 21st, the Alpha Prime effort. Try to get the best runs they can. Garrett Smithley getting up there to 23rd. Seeing tweets from him earlier today. He's over in Atlanta there for the football game out there. Looking at Justin Allgaier, leading 19 laps, and then, being involved in that incident there towards the end. Crossed Taylor Gray's nose. Or actually, I guess that was Sam Mayer, rather, that Allgaier had the other incident there that got Ryan Seed collected in it. It ended up being a pretty big mess at the end of the day there, too. So some top contenders there as well having trouble. Again, the Xfinity race, I don't really have as many faults to really describe with it, that one there. I thought that for whatever reason, whether it's just, again, the Xfinity car just putting on a great show and being able to kind of salvage anything out of whatever track that they compete on, it's certainly something to look at there too. Yeah, again, I think that's another part to certainly look at the same time. So if I haven't scared everybody off, we'll do some trivia here tonight, or any other questions here from the race weekend. I want to offer my condolences again to the family, friends, and fans of the late great Paul Goldsmith, who passed away this week at the age of 98. Famous driver in the sport's early years. That was the last driver to win on the beach in 1958. Not to make mention of his other accomplishments in other motorsports, including the Indy 500. A tremendous living legend in the sport there for so many years. But again, a life well lived there for sure. Again, it's you try to get as many of these stories as possible about what's happening with a lot of these drivers throughout the field and throughout their careers. But I'm glad to hear that a lot of people are talking more about Goldsmith's career. A driver that was, I think in many ways overlooked, even in his era, where you had, big names just in the very inception of motorsports, at least in that time period there. But again, kind of a different time period. Let's see. Alrighty. Yeah, Paul Goldsmith, Florida native. There you go. Let's see here. So, let me check out this. And, alrighty. And, let me check this out here, too. Thank you, Reverend Rasheem Hall Stewart. Thank you for your super chat. I'll go ahead and jump into this here. What race made you fall in love with NASCAR? I think that's a good way to pivot there. Thank you very much. Thank you for the super chat, first and foremost. It's a good question. It's, I would say, again, I'm not going to pretend to be above being into like the crashes or just the regular visuals of the sport there, because my earliest memory of the sport was Rick Mast flipping upside down at Talladega back in 1991 there, and then walking away, and just how incredible that was to see for somebody that was 7-8 years old at the time there. But in terms of a race that, could have been, again, something that really kind of galvanized the interest. That's a good question. I mean, certainly seeing Sears Point in person was a part of that. Seeing a driver, again, great storyline throughout. a driver that dropped to the back of the field with Ernie Irvan jumping the start, working his way back through the field and back up to the front. I think that there's other moments where, man, I mean, there's so many others that I think had a critical role in like at least establishing it. I would say that certainly 92 at Sears Point with that rally. I would say 95 at Bristol, just the atmosphere of that race. I still remember so clearly Dr. Jerry Punch talking about, again, a race that was worthy of that hype from all those years, that it was a very physical race, that somebody was going to roll into victory lane with their beaten and battered car, and not knowing that, of course, you're going to have Dale Earnhardt, piling through the field there, whether it was his battle with Rusty Wallace and them throwing water bottles at each other, or, of course, the wreck with him and Terry Labonte to the finish, which, of course, foreshadowed on what happened 4 years later in the same race. That one really stands out. I have very fond memories of that race, and just, again, how physical the racing was, how the drivers kind of manifested their own different racing skills into, those moments, how Terry Labonte was trying to kind of hang on to that lead, and win with Hendrick Motorsports there. And then you got Earnhardt that's just kind of beating the nose of his car up to that point, and, something very different. You see the differences in personalities in the way the racing was. One that I always find myself going back to, even though it was much later in life, that I always circle, was the 2005 Daytona 500. And I know a lot of younger fans have criticized that race because it had a whole lot of debris cautions. But that one there, I think, was just exhilarating. That whole Speed Weeks that year just had something that was going on that whole week that, for whatever reason, truck race was great, Busch race was great, Cup race was great. And you had a lot of the big names in the sport. This was a time where it wasn't like all the big names were wiped out and they weren't a factor. Quite the opposite. Jeff Gordon wins that 500, but right behind him, you got Kurt Busch, you got Jimmy Johnson, you got Tony Stewart, who had dominated so much of the race that day. And then, you had a couple of people that mixed in there at the same time. You had Kevin LePage and Scott Riggs that were having great weeks. I talked about LePage in the R&J video. And then on top of all of this, you had Rusty Wallace and Mark Martin, who at the time was that they were going to both retire at the end of the year. Of course, with Mark Martin, those plans changed, but both of them looking to push each other to the front, and indeed got up into the top 10 again there, especially after Mark had been in an accident during the duels that wiped out what was his best car that week, and the crew somehow got that thing pieced back together for the event. There was so much that was going on. It was peak storylines, great competitive racing, and, it had crashes and had cautions, had restarts, but it was able to get settled on the track there, and it was really good. And I don't feel that I hold every race to that level, but I feel like I could distill from that, some elements that, you always kind of hope to see from one race to the other there. So that was kind of a different look. But yeah, good question. That's a good question for sure. There, because, I think all of those, I think the love was already there by 2005 for sure. But I'd say probably, if I had to pick one, probably that 95 race would be another one there earlier, because I think that would be another good way to discuss that. But, Oh, Tim Dayton, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you checking out the stream. Let's see. Yeah. Again, look, if people enjoy the race and all that, that's fine, their thing. But, again, I judge them how I see them there. And again, who's listening to this? Like, come on, no, nobody is. So if you like the race, nobody's going to be, no, I swear there's not going to be anybody out there who's going to be like, oh no, Brock didn't like this race, we better fix something. That's not happening. So come on. I have no illusions about that for sure. I do have some fun news though. Things are, despite the start of the show here, I will say that I have something I'm very excited about right here. And those of you who are in the NASCAR Patreon, you already know about this right now. So, patreon.com/NASCAR on Brock. I've been posting some new content in there. Now, not new content that I produce for my own channel, but what I've been doing lately is actually going through my archives, because I've collected a lot of footage from over the years. Just broadcast over the years that I've saved on tape and then copied over to disc, and now copying over to digital format. And, obviously we have great stuff out there these days, not only many of the great archivers that are here on YouTube, as well as the NASCAR Classics page, which has done a fantastic job spreading the word about all of these really high quality broadcasts. But think back to when I did the starting grid videos in late 2008, 2009, thereabouts. And a lot of the stuff that I have from that era has just been in these DVD towers, kind of sitting, in a box under the house here, and just kind of started going through them and just kind of pulling them out there, finding old documentaries, qualifying broadcasts, and things of that nature. I've started sharing these in the Patreon. So if you're looking for content actually in between when I'm releasing new videos on this channel, I would highly recommend checking out the Patreon. I posted out new videos for all the members from between 1 and 5 and the $10 members there as well. Most are in the $5 level there. The $1 is kind of the introductory one there, so I had kind of some samples there to go with it. But that's something I'm really looking to do, and it's not going to be here on this main channel you're watching the stream from. What I'm doing is I'm kind of rebuilding my second channel there, where I had originally done some streams in 2020 and 2021. To kind of use that as a base and kind of rebuild that up as to an archive of just older footage. And of course, it's not monetized or anything like that. At the moment, it really does, it only has like 100 subscribers on there anyway. But I'm not really worried about that at the moment, just kind of get all that stuff just kind of online here. And that's kind of been my focus these last couple of months. So, kind of getting that going in the background. My original thought was kind of wait until the off season to do that, but I've decided to kind of use the off season between now and really then to kind of gradually release those videos on the Patreon, so everybody gets a chance to see it there. We certainly want to make sure the Patreon members get their money's worth for it. But then once that period extends, I was going to make those public on the second channel, and then everybody is able to see them at that point there too. So know that that's also in the works there too, not just the content on my channel, because I get a lot of questions about the production time it takes on the videos. Often what happens is I'll be working on a script, and then I'll have like another idea for something else to come up, and that starts coming together. But we got a lot of stuff that's in the pipeline here that's coming through. In fact, I even got another script from NASCAR Man History that I plan on recording after the show here tonight. So yeah, we got a lot of exciting stuff coming up here, but you shouldn't have to wait quite as long for other video content, at least in this immediate future here, as that stuff gets phased in. So if you are a Patreon member, make sure you check out that page there, because you have advanced access to other content on there. I want to make sure you are able to take advantage of that too. So that will be in there at the same time. But yeah. So there's the other interesting content on there, and trying to kind of get that going. And yeah, we'll see how things shake out from there. But the other content coming up here, 500 days on the Texas race is still in the works. You already got that recorded and getting things going on that. The episode after it on Martinsville, I still want to kind of get that script finished up. And yeah, very excited about kind of checking all that out going forward here. So we'll find out if that's going to be the, just kind of what the direction is going to be from here. And yeah, I guess we'll see how that's going to be going here too. Anyway, let me look here. We got the Xfinity series part of it there. I'm just kind of looking actually on this here. I do have a list of other videos that I've been running through here to try to get that processed. Some of these still have the old commercials, which has been itself kind of a time capsule here too. And we're not even talking about like, way back in the sport. Again, kind of like late 2000s, early 2010s, which probably for some of you, I sense that a lot of viewers here are probably a lot of, younger viewers here. And that was probably when you started watching the sport, either in the Nextel Cup era, maybe if you go that far back into like that era, or at least the Sprint Cup series and the Sprint Cup playoffs and ESPN covering the second half of the year. That would be kind of an interesting part to look at too. But yeah, I'm hopeful that everything goes up here okay. And we'll kind of phase that in again through the Patreon, and then being able to check out what's on there too. And just kind of, have my own contribution to the wealth of NASCAR content that's on YouTube here at the same time. I think when it's done, whenever that point is, and that's going to take some time too, it'll be something I think people will be really able to enjoy there. And I certainly hope that's the case too. Because again, this is playoff era racing too. It's definitely got its own focus back when Sprint was, the major sponsor, and telecommunications ads and everything in there. It's hard for me to think of that as a different era, but it really is, just from how much the sport changes, even in just that, the span of a decade plus. But that's always been a part of the sport there too. But I'm excited to bring that out there. So if you want to see some samples of that, stay tuned to the channel is called NASCAR Archives. You may have seen it in your feed already. I've been posting it on the main channel here as well. NASCAR Archives, that is the channel on YouTube. If you want to check that out, I believe there's a couple videos in there already. We'll have some more there this week, and others will be kind of phased in from there. And I'm still kind of figuring out the upload schedule on that as I get the last of the current content here, kind of through all the hoops here and just getting that all set up. So that should be something interesting to find out at the same time. Yep, see, there you go. You came in the late Nextel, early COT era. Yep, there you go. You kind of see that era where the cars kind of evolved, where you had the COT, and then they kind of changed the rear spoiler, and then they kind of smoothed over the front of the car. I still think probably one of my favorite cars from the Cup Series era has been like kind of that 2011, 2012 era, where they kind of smoothed over the nose and also the rear spoiler. I mean, they were still kind of the brick of what a COT was. But I thought those made very competitive cars. I thought they were really, I mean, they were great on the super speedways in terms of the bumpers lining up. That's why the two-car tandem was so big back then. It's so hard to think of that as back then, but really it is. But yeah, I mean, hopefully that comes across there too, because I think that was another part to look at that. Let's see here. Willie B asking about a Stroker Ace review. There's always a possibility. I have other thoughts about like doing some content on like movie related content, including a more full analysis of the physical media here behind me as well. I haven't forgotten about that. I actually made some preparations on that too. It's definitely not a situation of being able to have a lack of ideas or anything like that. It's just a matter of just how much time. But we're working through it. I think it'll be good coming up here too. Alrighty. Yeah, 95 Bristol race. Yeah, exactly. That one's a really good one. Dalton Reed, that's a good question about the JD McDuffie there too. Again, it's different situation where, I mean, JD McDuffie was a driver. I never got the chance to actually see him compete. As I mentioned, that July Talladega race was the last Cup race before JD's final start at Watkins Glen that year, and I did not see that race live, so I didn't have any memory of it. I just kind of came across it like in about 2000, 2001. There was somebody online, I believe it was called TZ Enterprises, did a website with old pictures of this accident, and of course, by that point, I'd seen NASCAR for a few years. I never really thought about Watkins Glen having any kind of incidents like that in its history. Hadn't heard about it elsewhere, hadn't heard it mentioned in broadcasts. And so I was kind of intrigued by it, and it was just kind of trying to figure that out. And, really ever since then, I found a die-cast of the car at a local antique shop. And this is early internet era, but you could still browse things that way and try to kind of find information. And that really kind of was the start of the process of writing the book. It wasn't the plan back when I was in high school. It had no real thought of doing that. I did enjoy writing, and I enjoyed research as well. But getting to that point there, I think that was really something that was much more, just intriguing at that point. Because again, it was something that it was in such recent history at the time, within about a decade there. It's like, well, it seems like I would have heard about this, but I didn't. And so, yeah, ever since then, I was trying to just find out more information. You run into one person, they know a couple other people. You find one article, it mentions other people, and you try to find them. And it just kind of took on a mind of its own. And, I was thinking about this earlier this weekend. I've had situations like that from time to time where it's like, okay, here's a project I'll probably do if I have a bit more time to do it. And then you think about it, and then it becomes more and more of a thought. And then you just like, okay, I'm just going to start working on it now just so I can stop thinking about it and kind of move on to the next thing. And then there's always going to be something else going. And this was another example of it, just trying to get that book together and get that going. So I think that would be another one to certainly look at the same time. But yeah, that was really the start of that. So good question there too. But yeah, any rate, we'll do some trivia here. I don't really have anything for show and tell. I guess I can tell you about the shirt here again, but I actually have a Jamie McMurray version of this from 2006, where it had like an interesting version of the Crown Royal car. It put like what looked like rims on the current car on it, but this one kind of went with the old design there on the Dodge. But I like how they kind of did it on this here, with the driver's name and so forth. Also, just kind of a bright yellow deal there, kind of a little different from what you would usually see from one design to the next. Let's see. What you're describing sounds somewhat akin to what TV Tropes calls a wiki walk. Kind of like that. I mean, sometimes Wikipedia could be helpful, at least in terms of finding sources and so forth, or at least some names. But I don't know. I don't make that really kind of central to what I usually do on these projects. Usually my starting point would be either newspapers.com or JSki or something like that, or just a regular Google search in general, because sometimes you'll just find like interesting stuff that way. I know that everything has its drawbacks in terms of how precise it's going to be, but that's why you try to match up as much material as possible to try to get as close as you can. Of course, you always run the risk of, if the more details you bring in, you increase exponentially your risk that you're going to be wrong about some detail, whether it's a big detail or a small one. But all you can do is just work with what you have and try to, figure it out as best you can and try to minimize that as much as possible. And, hopefully at the end of the day, you got something that is going to be maybe not the most authoritative source on it, but at least something that's going to be, if not closer to that point, at least able to bring other people close to that point too. So hopefully it gets there, but that's another place to kind of look at that. Let's see here. Alrighty. Let me see here. We'll go ahead and jump into that. Yeah, Internet Wayback Machine. Exactly, Dave. And yeah, you know how it is too. Yeah, with your archive there as well. Again, Wayback Machine is a tremendous help. In fact, actually, I'm glad you reminded me of that, because that's actually one of my upcoming projects. I still have to kind of go through that step too, because I got a couple web addresses to investigate there at the same time. We'll go ahead and jump into our trivia section here a little bit earlier here than we usually do, but we'll go ahead and do that here for this portion of it there. We'll go ahead and bring out the late 90s deal here, and we'll give some questions here for the latter part of the show. If you have any questions or anything else I failed to discuss from this weekend here, I'll definitely mention it in the chat, and we'll jump into that as well. But in the meantime, the categories are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild cards. So go ahead and mention in the chat which category you'd like here. Once again, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those would be the categories that we'll have there at the same time. There we go. Oh, Jimmy, no, thank you for your support as well. Absolutely. Do I have any old Whelen Modified Tour broadcast? I don't think I do, Tim. I'm afraid I don't. Most of my content is mostly the Cup Series with some like Xfinity and trucks. I think I had like a K&N race in there too, like a K&N West race. I'm going to have to still look through it. Some of these clips, the tricky part is with my DVD recorder, like when it recorded some stuff, it didn't create like little breaks in it from one program to the next. So sometimes it'll just be a block of stuff. That's another thing I'm working on too. It's like anything that's in there, it's like, look, it's like, this is going to be a real issue if it's still in there. I'm just clipping that stuff out. And I'm also trying to kind of get rid of the fluff before at the start of the clip too. So hopefully when you start the video, it's actually starting with what it says that it's in there. I'm glad that YouTube actually has some of those functions there. They're making that a little bit easier, because the time it would take to actually go through the editor and produce the video and do that would just take so much more time. Even though these are going to be, nothing's going to be in like, crystal clear HD. The DVD recorder I had at the time had to use kind of conventional plugs and so forth. And so it's going to be a little bit different there. And there may well be, a time where, maybe higher quality clips are going to be available. But a lot of these that I'm seeing here are ones that are not currently up. So I'm hopeful that that's going to be the case there too. Yeah, no, I'm with you there too. So the Internet Archive thing, that's all part of the Internet Wayback Machine too. I thought those were separate deals. I've heard of the Internet Archive case, but I haven't heard of it beyond that. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully that doesn't go because I mean, the Internet Wayback Machine is such a fantastic resource. It would be terrible for that to go anywhere. Do, 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 do. Yep, Adam. Yep, I remember the Coke 600 starting grid too. That's another one to bring up. Alrighty. Yeah, DVD recorders. Good memories from around 29 to 2009 to 2012. Use one of them also every weekend. Yep, exactly. Internet Archive runs Wayback Machine. Okay, I did not know that. So yeah, well, certainly hope that turns out the positive direction there because yeah, that's been a wonderful resource on here. Looking up the old Racing Underdog website and everything, something stuff I haven't seen since like I was in school, which is a long time ago now. But yeah, it would be terrible to lose that. Yeah, Blackie Wangren's another one there too. I'm seeing Dalton. You're talking about him. Yeah, there was also a Dink Widenhouse passed away recently. He was another driver. He drove the B29 car way back when in like the 50s, and that one didn't get a lot of attention. I saw that come up, so I kind of kept a list here because I like to try to kind of put that in my kind of my ending credits thing with the videos. But yeah, I didn't see a lot of news on that there at the same time. Alrighty, where are we here? We got a few with teams. We'll go ahead and do some teams questions. Let's see about three with those there. So we'll jump into that. Here we go. Here's a good one. What driver's only win for himself and owner Junie Donlavey came at Dover in 1981? What driver's only win for himself and owner Junie Donlavey came at Dover in 1981? That'll be our first question here. Do. Alrighty. Let's see. Yeah, 2013 Daytona. I'm looking at some of the older comments here too. Beast of Metal, that's a good comparison. The 2013 Daytona 500. Yeah, I forgot about how not good that one was. That was unfortunate. And that one had a lot of hype because of the Gen 6 car. Yes, the cars looked better. I mean, they were pretty cool. I still kind of favored the 2011 to 2012 ones because they had a little bit of that. They just smoothed over so many of the edges that they had a nice simplicity to them. And again, I think they raced great too. But that was another one at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully Watkins Glen is good. Watkins Glen was, again, they've been through. I was mentioning this I was on Kyle Foster's stream this week, and if you haven't seen the video, I have it linked in I have a podcast appearances playlist on this channel here, and I also retweeted on my Twitter account there. So definitely give it a check. We actually had a good discussion about the calendar for next year, which we talked about a bit on the show here last week, and some of the other changes coming forward. So that'll be another one to look at. And yes, Charles Peterson, I am happy the Bills won their season opener. I was a little concerned when they were down to the Cardinals at the beginning. That was not a promising start this year, but that'll be another one. Do. Yeah, Christian Fittipaldi. Christian Fittipaldi would be pretty cool if they have it. I think I saw somebody made like a hat. Gosh, was that on? Yeah, I guess there was somebody that made like a hat that was a Christian Fittipaldi one. That change happened so late in like the '03 season. I didn't even think they actually made any merch for it, but I guess that was the case. Going back to the question here again, what driver's only win for himself and owner Junie Donlavey came at Dover in 1981? A lot of you guessed Jody Ridley, and the answer is indeed correct. Jody Ridley, you guys got it. You're good. Jody Ridley. All right. Okay, nope. Let's do another one here. Here we go. What future car owner learned the ropes as a test driver for Junior Johnson? There's your next question. What future car owner learned the ropes as a test driver for Junior Johnson? Yeah, no, I was surprised too, Beast of Metal. I was kind of concerned about that at the same time. They kind of have a slower start to the year and then peak right around playoff time. It's like, they got to take advantage of this window they're in, though. I think that, they can't be sitting on it as long as it is. I mean, it's tricky. I may come off as like coming off a bit petty when it comes to describing these races and stuff like that. But when it comes to like football or baseball or something like that, I'll just be completely petty and partisan on that. I'm going to be like, nope, if it's, I, I can't wait for, well, again, and it's, not a unique situation among people that are fans of, any team that's not won a Super Bowl or anything like that. Obviously, we saw the Lions have a resurgence last year too. Hopefully they can at least get one. We'll find out. Go Bills. All right, what future car owner learned the ropes as a test driver for Junior Johnson is a question. We got guesses for David Blair, Andy Petrie, Bud Moore, Joe Gibbs, Robert Yates. This is a good split. We got a good split here. There's not a consensus here on this one. Interesting. Hey, the playoffs started? Playoffs? I just want to win a game. Speaking of which, Last Bro and I still haven't picked a winner this year, too. That didn't really factor into it. Both of us still got top 10s, so that really wasn't a factor as much in my frustration there. But I did kind of notice that, that was kind of an issue for some of these guys to get through there. I don't know. What future car owner learned the ropes as a test driver for Junior Johnson? The answer is Richard Childress. Childress is the answer. I don't think anybody got that. That was tricky. That's not what I would have guessed either. I kind of like Dalton's guess here with Bud Moore. That would have been interesting. Because I know Junior Johnson goes very far back in the sport's history, as does Bud. But Childress is the correct answer. Crazy. Everybody's got to start somewhere. That's the exciting part. Yeah, let's see. Just had like 3 Wood Brothers questions in a row here. They're a little bit too easy. Okay, here we go. Here's an interesting one. What 1995 Food City 500 win? Wait, is it what or whose? Whose, excuse me. Whose 1995 Food City 500 win gave Goodyear its Winston Cup win number 1,000? Let me read that again. Whose 1995 Food City 500 win gave Goodyear its Winston Cup win number 1,000? Oh, Charles, yeah, you did get it. Right on. Richard Childress, exactly. You got it, man. There you go. That was a tricky one. Whose 1995 Food City 500 win gave Goodyear its Winston Cup win number 1,000? I'm going to need a drink water from my gargantuan water bottle here. Let me mute this for just a sec. Alrighty. Just upgraded that recently here. I was thinking of probably putting like the 3 X's on it so it looks like a moonshine thing or something, but maybe that would be too on the nose. Of course, I guess in cartoons those are usually look like clay pots or something like that. Or are they usually brown? I don't know. I went with red because that was kind of the same one I had for the other one there. So far, it's worked pretty well. It was so hot here last Friday. I'll tell you what. Went through all of that with time to spare at work. It was crazy. And I'm not even like a construction worker or anything. It was just working desk job kind of between one office and the other there. But it was just so hot outside. Crazy. Hopefully the weather is more mild wherever you are watching this from. Yeah, this is 64 ounces right here. Check that out. There you go. So, yeah. I took the rubber thing off my last one, but I'm keeping it on this one because I think this would damage the table if I put it in the wrong position there. Alrighty. Oh, yeah, let's get the question here. Whoop, just turned off. Let's turn it back on there. Okay, here we go. Whose 1995 Food City 500 win gave Goodyear its Winston Cup win number 1,000? And the answer is Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon is the answer. Yeah, you're right. 3Xs would be different now. I mean, that's definitely something that's changed a little bit over the decades, I'd have to say. Jeff Gordon's like, few of you got that one. Tim Dayton, you got it first there. I see Jimmy Clements as well. Charles Peterson Jr. Tim Dayton, you got it again there. Yep, you got it. There you go. Let's see. Okay, that one's a little too easy. Let me try to get some good ones here. Ooh. Oh, no. Still looking. Okay. Next question. Who drove a whopping 175 races for Buck Baker from 1963 through 1966? Who drove a whopping 175 races for Buck Baker from 1963 through 1966? That is the question. Alrighty. Yeah, it was a tricky one there, but yep, Jeff Gordon again on that one, on that last one. As the Buffalonians call it, small. Exactly. Yep, that's a small right there. I'm glad this. I hope this plastic thing holds up on it. I don't want to test it too much, but I would imagine if it came with it, it's designed to hold so far. My last one, I had a 24-ounce one on the show here before. You probably saw it on the show here too. And that handle held up. I almost thought of just keeping that same lid instead of going with this new one here. But yeah, it turns we gone from NASCAR to football to water bottle talk here. So we're running the gamut here tonight. But that's okay. Who drove a whopping 175 races for Buck Baker from 1963 through 1966 is the question. Buddy Baker, Ned Jarrett, Bobby Allison, David Pearson, all good guesses, but what is the answer? The answer is Neil Castles. Neil Soapy Castles, who we featured on this channel. I don't believe that was a statistic I brought up in there. Neil Castles is the correct answer, who drove a whopping 175 races for Buck Baker from 1963 to 1966. Alrighty. Yeah, Charlie Glotzback. That's also a good guess. See, we got some throwback names here for sure. I also liked Jeremy Clements' throwback to Mark Martin, by the way. That paint scheme was nice. I like that they even went for like the red rims on it. That looked really good. There we go. Next question. What owner signed Joe Nemechek for Joe's first full NASCAR Winston Cup season? So which owner? We're looking for an owner name here. What owner signed Joe Nemechek for Joe's first full NASCAR Winston Cup season? That's going to be the question. I did bring it up, did I? Okay. Well, there you go. Neil Castles. Neil Soapy Castles. That was that was a challenging video because there was only so much information, but I thought that thing about him winning all the qualifying races was really interesting because I do know that there were some events that had like those, those last minute eliminations to try to get the last few drivers in the field, and that he was unusually good at those, whether he was sandbagging or not. I don't know, but an interesting way to have it play out. Question again, what owner signed Joe Nemechek for Joe's first full NASCAR Winston Cup season? Excuse me. All right, we got guesses for Larry Hedrick, Felix Sabates, Hendrick, Richard Childress, Joe Nemechek himself. It's a good guess. It's a good guess, but let's see. What owner signed Joe Nemechek for Joe's first full NASCAR Winston Cup season? The answer is indeed Larry Hedrick, he of the number 41 car. This would be 1994. He was during that very large rookie class back then. Yeah, we'll just do a couple more here. A little bit of an earlier show today. Glad to get one that's a little bit earlier in the day. I'll tell you that much here. We've had so many night shows here, or the Monday afternoon one there too after the Michigan race. It's good to have one in more or less a normal part of the day here. So I hope that that's at least coming across. And we'll look forward to something similar next week at Watkins Glen. What owner ended 3 years with various drivers by signing Lake Speed for 1995? This is the next question here. I'll read it again. What owner ended 3 years with various drivers by signing Lake Speed for 1995? So we're looking for another owner here. Those of you guessed Larry Hedrick on the last one, you got it. Charles Peterson Jr., I think you were the first one on that. Dalton Reed, Michael Jensen, Jimmy Clemens, excuse me. What owner ended 3 years with various drivers by signing Lake Speed for 1995 is the question. Right. Do you have any calls on inspection? Probably still too early. I don't see any call yet. Suspension, the reason out for Truex there. I thought it was going to be a DVP thing, but looks like that was not the case. He did have a pretty bad vibration after that contact. Alrighty, here we go. What owner ended 3 years with various drivers by signing Lake Speed for 1995? And the answer is indeed Harry Melling, Melling Racing. Yep, Bill Elliott left them after the 91 season. They were going to have Chad Little in there for part of 92, I believe. They had Phil Parsons, Dorsey Schrader. Oh, gosh, everybody. Rich Bickle. So many drivers were in that car. P.J. Jones. Phil Parsons. 92, 93, 94. Kind of in that range. Oh, who else? Joe Ruttman, I think. I think Ruttman. I'm not 100% on that. He might have driven a second Melling car. Yeah. But yeah, that was, yeah. But the spam car there and getting Lake Speed in there definitely brought some much needed stability to that program. It's a good one too. Oh, Michael, thank you so much for the super chat here. Just home from work, so no comment on the Cup race. Oh, okay, I'll leave it there. One funny thing from the Xfinity race, Pat Patterson on PRN kept calling Justin Allgaier's car the Mayo Missile. That's quite good, actually. I like that. See, that's kind of the fun part. See, I thought the people, I heard somebody else on the radio that said that they weren't supposed to be talking about sponsors all the time. I thought that was the thing that they weren't going to do. Oh, but somebody's having fun with doing it. That's good. And quite the opposite. I think it's fantastic that they do that and bring up these sponsors. But I'm glad that there's I'm glad there's a little bit of a difference in philosophy there, perhaps from one person to the next, to actually, feature the sponsors. Why not? It helps paint the picture, especially when, like Allgaier's car has a really vibrant looking paint job that whenever they run the Hellman scheme, whether it's him or Junior or anybody else, it's usually a pretty good looking car. So that would be another one. Dave Mater is another one. Yep, there's another one. But again, thank you for the super chat for sure. I definitely recommend of course you would, but definitely recommend watching the race before watching the first part of the stream. Alrighty. Okay. We'll just do one more question here tonight, folks. Last question for tonight. What team owner drove relief for Richard Petty at Bristol in 1980? Don't look it up. Try to guess it. Here we go. What team owner drove relief for Richard Petty at Bristol in 1980? Oh, made that quilt. My mother made that. My mom made the quilt there. You have a couple of other quilts in here too. While you guys have the answer to the question, I'll go ahead and show you here. I've shown it before on this. So yeah, so some of the old fabrics on here. And there you go. You can kind of see some of your designs. Some of the racetracks were hand-drawn. I hand-drew these, and then she traced them onto fabric. There's Indianapolis there. Oh, that's out of focus. Let me see if I can kind of bring it into focus here. There you go. I can see that a little bit. Oh, my hat's getting in the way. But yeah, some of the late 90s fabrics there. Some of the driver graphics, Terry Labonte, Michael Waltrip. You got Ted Musgrave on the other side. There's Darlington here, Martinsville. There's a Ted Musgrave over there. But yeah, they got that design there. We have this one. We have a baseball quilt over here. And then we have, let's see, where's the circus quilt on this wall here? This one's really vibrant on the other side. Actually, you should sit on that side of the room during the race here. And this Hawaiian, I believe it's a not hieroglyph, but the equivalent of that there. Different little carve-out patterns there on that too. So yeah, you kind of have all these decorating the room in here. It's always been tricky at our old place to try to find a good place to display them. But this has been a good setup in here. Had nice big walls, and so it's great to be able to actually kind of see them. They really add a lot of color to the room here for sure. But thank you. I'll definitely make sure she knows that you like the quilt. Thank you very much. All righty. Let's see. Oh yes, the question here. What team owner drove relief for Richard Petty at Bristol in 1980 is the question. We got guesses for Childress. Kyle Petty. That's also a good guess. Kyle Petty did own a team. Yeah, that's true. That's another one too. And this is a late 90s thing, so it would have that information. So, okay, one more time. What team owner drove relief for Richard Petty at Bristol in 1980? You guys got it. The answer was indeed Richard Childress. Michael Jensen, you were the first one on that one. Beast of Metal, Jimmy Clements, Dalton Reed. You all got it. Yeah, that is a good question. Very good question. Ritz Quackers. I like that username. That's good. Excellent. Excellent. Well, tell you what. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just have that be where it is right now. That'll be it for the show here tonight. Pending, of course, post-race inspection. Your last place finisher today will be Chase Briscoe. The article on that will be up later tonight. In the meantime, the website is lastcar.info. My Twitter feed is at lastcaronbrock. And my Patreon is patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. And definitely make sure, if you're a Patreon member, to check out your page, because there's some new content in there I posted since this weekend. And there'll be some more coming up this week as well. So there'll be some more information on that. Our next show is going to be next Sunday after the Cup race at Watkins Glen. We'll talk about the Xfinity race and the Cup Series race. As we go back road racing again, the entry list storylines piece will be up this Friday, and we'll find out what happens in this next round of the playoffs. We're back in the system here again. Find out who's going to be joining Joey Logano in the round of 12. So in the meantime, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Hope you had a great weekend here. Have a safe week, and I'll see you all next weekend.